Hello, my name is Aisha Adkins, and I am the constituency organizer for Caring Across Generations. Thank you for joining us at Caregiver Corner. Caring Across Generations field partners, hand in hand, are celebrating their 10th anniversary with a national project honoring domestic work. Today, I am joined by three powerful women who are helping to celebrate the domestic workers and caregivers who have for far too long been undervalued and underrecognized in our society. I am excited to have with me Gillian Fallon, a creative producer and an Atlantic Fellow for Equity in Brain Health at the Global Brain Health Institute at the University of California at San Francisco. Reshma Saujani, founder of Girls Who Code and Marshall Plan for Moms, TEDx Talk presenter, best-selling author, and mom of two humans and a fur child, and Stacy Kono, executive director and of Hand in Hand and Bay Area resident and a granddaughter of a domestic worker. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Caring Across Generations, we are a national movement comprised of family caregivers, persons with disabilities, and older adults, organizing to transform the way that care is given, received, and viewed in this country so that everyone has access to care infrastructure that is equitable, accessible, and affordable for all. Our partners at Hand in Hand launched a really beautiful storytelling project called Honor Domestic Work, where they are asking people to share, they're asking people to honor someone for their care and support by sharing their story. Then Hand in Hand amplifies their story on social media and also on their Honor Domestic Work website. And when you share that story, you will get this gorgeous poster by Bay Area artist Mika Besant for free, right? Isn't this gorgeous? Absolutely stunning. One of my favorite artists. Absolutely beautiful. So let's take some time now to talk with these three contributors to the project about their connections to domestic work and the importance of uplifting these stories. So I'd like to first speak with Stacy Kono. Stacy, you are the director of Hand in Hand, an organization that helps people employing domestic workers to do the work with dignity. Your grandmother was a domestic worker, and now your parents, who are in their 80s, employ a house cleaner. So you've certainly seen the dynamics of domestic worker employee-employee relationship. Where did the idea for this project come from, and what does it mean to honor domestic work?
Thanks so much, Aisha, to Caring Across Generations and to Marshall Plans for Moms for joining us in this conversation today to talk about the project. So at Hand in Hand, we're organizing to build an economy that centers care and dignity. So that means bringing respect and rights to domestic workers and expanding access to care in the home. The home is too often seen as a private space, not a part of our collective experiences, which often hides domestic work from public view. And this invisibility leaves domestic workers vulnerable. And it also leaves the consumers and employers to manage on their own without very much support. We saw that especially in the last 2 years when so many of us have been staying at home and trying to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe during the pandemic. We were reminded about how fundamental domestic work is to the functioning of our families, of our world, right? So we've learned that during the pandemic, domestic workers have been hard hit, losing work without access to a social safety net. We also know that family caregivers of aging and disabled loved ones, as well as parents, have been carrying a really heavy burden for their families under increased stress. So this year, in our 10th anniversary year, we wanted to create the opportunity for all of us to appreciate caregiving and work in the home. And that's where Honor Domestic Work as a project came about, to recognize the essential community of people who represent the growing caring majority of our nation, family caregivers and domestic workers. Through the project, like you were saying, Aisha, we're inviting people to share their stories of appreciation with us through our website or on social media with the hashtag honor domestic work. We also commissioned the art poster from Micah Bazant, the one you just shared, a Bay Area artist. Beautiful, beautiful poster. We deeply appreciate your work. This poster is a gift that people can give to workers and caregivers to recognize them and their work. The project enables us to extend appreciation to so many people in our lives, whether it's remembering someone like my grandmother who passed away years ago, but told me stories of being an immigrant domestic worker herself, cleaning houses throughout the Bay Area. Or I actually chose to honor my mom, who's a caregiver for my dad, who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's. My mom, in turn, got inspired to honor the house cleaners who support her and my dad by giving them a poster. So it's a project that anyone can participate in, and it's a project that makes sure that we do not take domestic workers and our unpaid family caregivers for granted. We are so grateful to Caring Across Generations, to Marshall Plan for Moms, to the many organizational partners and individuals who've joined this project to really lift up the love and celebration for domestic work.
That's really beautiful, Stacy. And I love that as you recognized your grandmother and then your mother recognized the house cleaners in her home, and there's this chain of kindness and this chain of recognition that's taken place, and that's so beautiful and so necessary in this world, particularly where there's such as you've mentioned, there's a lack of visibility and this privatization of domestic work and of caregiving, and I think this continuation of recognition and honor can really do so much to increase that visibility. So I think that's absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, Reshma, you founded Marshall Plan for Moms, which is a project of the 501c3 Girls Who Code, which I'm sure many of our viewers are familiar with. And this project in particular focuses on the fact that the United States is the only country that fails to recognize and compensate mothers for the very real and challenging work of parenting. Would you share a bit more about, first of all, about Marshall Plan for Moms, and then really what that struggle is to get that recognition and what Marshall Plan for Moms plans to do about it?
Yeah, so, when I started the pandemic in 2020, we were on top of the world. Girls Who Code had just had a Super Bowl ad. I was having my second child, who I had fought really hard to have, and I was finally going to take, maternity leave, and then the world blew up. And, as everyone on this call knows, when pandemics hit, the first resources to go are those resources to women and girls. So I cut my maternity leave, the entire team, kind of buckled down, and all of us had young children. And, so many of us then found ourselves having to save Girls Who Code while we're homeschooling our kids, while we're doing all the domestic work, while we're afraid that we might die, or even worse, our parents and our children might die, right? And so many of us, we were just barely, and I looked at all the women on my screen and we were just done. I got COVID-19, it barely registered, my liver failed, I got acne. But like my health issues were similar to so many of the health issues that so many of my team members were having. And a lot of us, I remember sitting there on the call, we'd be like, during at 6 o'clock, we do our last call, they would be like, when the schools open, we're going to be fine. And then when September rolled around and the schools didn't open, and we got that letter from my public school that, congratulations, we're launching this thing called hybrid learning, where you get to homeschool your kid and log them onto Zoom at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, all the while you maintain your full-time jobs. I thought that this is crazy. I can't believe that we implemented something like this and they never even asked us. And I saw two things. One, I saw so many of my Girls Who Code, who are girls of color, stop logging on to school, decided not to go to college or community college because their moms were essential workers and they were now responsible for taking care of their siblings. So all of their dreams, all of their hopes, gone, because they were expected by our nation to become a caretaker. And then you saw, the December jobs report where all the jobs lost for women of color, right? Women who found themselves, either with daycare centers shut, they couldn't rely on family members to come take care of their children, or they were in jobs like in retail and healthcare, jobs that no longer existed. And we just kept going along like nothing was wrong. And that this was our personal problem that we had to solve. And so I wrote an op-ed, just the Marshall, and I said, gosh, we need a Marshall Plan for moms. And I kept thinking about my parents came here as refugees, and my parents couldn't afford the $50 a week for childcare. So I was a latchkey kid when I was my son's age at 7. And so all of the moms who were so much, right, we were holding so much, sacrificing so much, suffering so much, and it felt like we just needed support. And the support that we needed was simple. Like there was consensus. If I talked to the moms in my PTA, you know what I mean? Or, my auntie in the bodega, she was like, listen, I need 4 things, Reshma. I need affordable childcare. I need paid leave. You know what I mean? I need retraining because my job doesn't exist anymore, and I need, schools to open up safely. But they were like, we all were agreed upon the things that we needed. And so we kind of started this real push, to amplify what so many organizations are writing, the Domestic Workers Alliance, paid leave for all, like all these organizations have been fighting for so long, right? To say enough is enough. We're not America's social safety net. And so we have continued kind of our amplification both in the public sector and also now in the private sector. 4% of companies subsidize childcare. More companies will pay for you to freeze your eggs than they will pay for your childcare. That is wrong. You know what I mean? 70% of American dads don't take paid leave. So even when it's offered, we gaslit men for taking it. So many of my moms, who are single moms from Girls Who Code will say, I had to leave work early at Walmart to go, pick up a computer that was being offered for free. And I lost my job because of that, because we don't have, can't take leave. So there are changes that the corporate sector needs to also make while we're waiting for government to get their minds right. You know what I mean? And give us I'm going to stop now. I go on forever. But the point is, that's what we're trying to do. And I'm just so grateful for Stacy, for you, Aisha, for all of the women who have been showing up every day for like decades and, trying to push this issue. And, I'm just here as a sister in solidarity to help that fight.
Most definitely. Well, Reshma, you hit on so many important points there because, this country for centuries, right, has been running on the idea that women, and particularly women of color, will just get everything done. We'll just continue to do, failing to take into account the exhaustion and the sacrifice that then comes along with that, and so the necessity of programs like Marshall Plan for moms, it's so essential, and it's unfortunate that it's essential because certainly it's a response to government failure. But we certainly hope that while we wait for the government to respond in kind, that we can all work together to make sure that these changes do take place.
Yeah.
Now, Gillian, you have employed several domestic workers, including a nanny, a house cleaner, and a home attendant. Would you share the impact that these relationships have had on you and your family? And also, how did you choose to honor members of your care teams through your participation in this project?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's so interesting to hear it posed that way. And I think back 10 years when I would have been very surprised to be having this conversation because 10 years ago, I was living with my partner in New York City. We were in a little studio in the West Village, and we basically just slept there. Our fridge had like ketchup and old soy sauce packets in it from takeout. And we were kind of, living our lives in the city, about to have a baby. And then we had a baby, which was amazing. But all of a sudden we were caring for someone besides ourselves. my partner is from Australia. His mom came over to visit us to meet the baby. And it became very quickly apparent that she had a cognitive impairment that ended up being diagnosed as dementia. So it was after talking to her doctors, we decided it was not safe for us to actually have her go back home and live by herself. So we went in a period of a few months to kind of living by ourselves, carefree and a wild New York City, to caring full time for a new baby and a person who was living with dementia. We had no infrastructure set up in our lives, and it became readily apparent that in order to function, both for each other, as partners, as parents, and as children who were supporting my mother-in-law, we needed help. So the domestic workers who helped us were absolutely essential to our quality of life and our home and our lives together. We overnight, our home became someone's workplace, became three people's workplaces. We were both also working full time. We both work in entertainment and travel a lot for work. So we had a wonderful woman named Maria come in and just help us get everything organized and maintain just an environment that would make our house into a home, keeping it clean, keeping everything where it should be. And Maria has been with us now for almost 10 years and is an absolute lifesaver. She is essentially like a part of our family. We know her kids. She comes over to our house for holiday parties. We're actually living in San Francisco for the year for work, and we really miss her. I'm going to be going back to Brooklyn next week, bringing one of the posters out there to be able to give to Maria. But yeah, Maria was and continues to be a lifesaver. We always appreciate Maria, but being without her for this year, we really noticed the impact on our lives. And then we also had an amazing nanny named Jackie, who came in and basically made our work out of the home possible. I would not have been able to continue my job at the level that I was performing in it without her help and care. And I learned so much from her about being a mom and caring for kids. And yeah, she was a huge part of our family and continues to be to this day, though she's no longer working for us as a nanny. And then home care attendants for my mother-in-law, Valerie, saved our lives and saved really Valerie's life as well, because we would not have been able to have those years together living as a family without home care. We would have had to go the institutional route because we were not able to be at home and provide the support that she needed for just daily functions, but then also just the social support and the engagement that we all need. But the person who's living with dementia has special needs around. So those home care attendants really made it possible for her to get to know her grandson and to play with him, and for all of us really to have that time together as a family that would not have otherwise been possible. So yeah, the domestic workers in my life are absolutely essential to my life.
That's really, I love the way in particular that you shared how having a home care attendant, the relationship that your mother-in-law developed with the home care attendant, and how that enabled her to then establish a relationship with your son. And, my mother was diagnosed with dementia in 2013. And so I, certainly can relate to the importance of having someone facilitate sometimes those social interactions that are so deeply important to maintaining a quality of life that is key, not only for the person living with dementia, but for the entire family. And so those are the integral things that I think people don't always acknowledge, that domestic workers maintain for the folks who do employ them, right? And so I think many times when people envision domestic work, sometimes the imagery that comes to mind is, sweeping and diaper changing. And often doesn't go far beyond that. I think people don't necessarily have a very good grasp of what all of that entails, but I think it really is about keeping families moving and going and living and growing together as a unit, and that is so that's something that really it's intangible in many ways, but so important. So I'm so that's really beautiful that you were able to articulate that in that way. Now, Reshma, I'd like to come back to you in a moment, or come back to you now, because as someone who is a working mother and who has employed a nanny, and you touched on this a bit in your last answer, but I would love for you to share with our audience that, as someone in that position, there's this myth, right, of the super mom, this idea that women can and should be able to do everything by themselves. What is being done to bust that myth?
Yeah.
And to really take that down and to reimagine this idea of really community care and collective care and employing others in that process. And Stacy and Gillian, also feel free to chime in here as well.
You've really, Aisha, seen how this has played out yesterday in oral arguments in the Supreme Court case, right? Where you have, Judge Bear basically saying, well, look at me. I did all this. I got 7 kids. I'm a Supreme Court justice. Like, you don't need reproductive rights, right? You don't need childcare, right? The Republicans say you don't need paid leave. You don't need support structures. It's an individual thing. And if you can't do it, mom, you're just a bad mom, right? That's your problem. And so we've kind of told this lie in society about that this is an individual thing. So, most people I know who have caretakers don't show pictures of them on Instagram when they're out there with their kids as if they did all this, right? And it's as if it's shameful, right, to say that you actually have help or do help. And it's why, our childcare workers are paid, parking lot attendants are paid more than childcare. The cost of bailing out the childcare industry is what we pay Delta. We care more about our airplanes than we care about our children. And so this entire lie, I call it the big lie, the entire lie needs to be dismantled, And so one, I think as a working mom, I tell the truth that I don't do this by myself. You know what I mean? And that I could never have built, and every speech about Girls Who Code and every book I've written, and one of the first people I think is Audrey, you know what I mean? Who's been with me since my child was born. Like, I cannot function without her. She is more important than anybody in my family. And so I think we have to just start telling the truth about it. And second, we have to start, if we're ever going to value unpaid labor, we have to pay for it. And as if we value it. And it should not be, something that we debate about. Every caretaker is an expert, period. You know what I mean? Is a professional and should be paid that way, period. Right? And so we have got to start changing the language. And that means, to me, it's also why I'm so, in the stuff we're doing at Marshall Plan for Moms, it's also why we have to get men more engaged in caretaking work. Because the reason why it is undervalued, the reason why the men in Washington or the men, who set the price for these things don't value it, is because they don't do it because they don't think it's valuable. So that whole cycle has got to change. And what I love about Stacy's campaign and about the work that we've done together, and hand in hand, and with the work you're involving is share your photo, tell your story, tell the story about the person who made you, who made your children you, who allowed you to make the change in the world or to function or to have some amount of mental health. You know what I mean? Tell that story. Let's remove the shame from it. And why do we have shame about it? I don't even, why, right? Why do we have shame? about it. I'm Indian, and so we grew up in a village, right? It's like we have always have had a community of aunties and cousins and relatives, and it's the only way it worked. It's the only way we could put food on the table. And so to me, it's also this thing is like very distinctly American. So I find it hard to even understand, and to explain.
100%. Gillian or Stacy, did you have a perspective you'd like to add?
I think Reshma really covered it well. Like, how are we cultivating collective care? The reality of it, as well as how are we celebrating and honoring it and recognizing and valuing care and support, both the care work of domestic workers, nannies, house cleaners, home care workers, but also of the family caregivers, the neighbors, the people that are really supporting what I would say our whole economy to function with no compensation. So how do we really shift that? I really just appreciate what Reshma is naming and what really the fundamental paradigms that we need to shift and policies we need to create.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wonderful. Well, Stacy, as we begin to kind of wrap up here, I'd just like to ask, as people began to share their stories and describe why it was important to them to honor the domestic workers and the caregivers in their lives, what were some themes that stood out to you?
Yeah, we launched this project in the beginning of November, and it's been like getting love letters all month long that just make my heart sing and warm. People honored house cleaners, nannies, personal attendants, home care workers, co-ops of workers that they work with. They appreciated partners, grandparents, parents, children, friends, neighbors. It's really shown how domestic work in our homes, whether paid or unpaid, is a fundamental part of our lives. I mean, I saw themes around what we've been talking about here today, the essential support at home, that childcare providers being lifelines for folks, especially during the pandemic, house cleaners and home care workers helping people when they're maybe injured or have a disability to be able to live their full lives, right? I also saw a theme around teamwork and this collective care piece, that nobody does this alone. Maggie talked about just the reciprocity between her grandmother as a caregiver to Maggie's mom, and how together the three of them made their household work. And then Tucker, he's living with a spinal cord injury, talked about his mom, the loving care she provided, and how together they've been an amazing team, which will continue as long as both of us are on the earth. I don't know if I have time to read a story, but there was one that we wanted to share with folks that came from a woman named Mari, who she renamed the caregiver that she works with Blessing as a way to protect her identity. But Mari's quadriplegic because of multiple sclerosis, which she's suffered about 30 years of her 75. And she says, but what joy Blessing has made possible for me and my family. Because of her services, we've been able to travel through various parts of the United States. Because of her services, I've been able to continue my work in the public sector, where I try to help other people with the skills I have developed over time. And I find great satisfaction and joy in that work. Because of her services, our home is run in an efficient and comfortable way. She talks about how Blessing is here at great personal sacrifice. She had to leave a couple of her children in her home country to come here and be able to support them all the way through college. She, Blessing, came fleeing domestic violence and economic violence in her home country, much of which is caused by huge international corporations who take on the lion's share of the nation's national resources. She says, I hope that's enough of the story to tell you about Blessing. There's so much more I wish I could tell you, but we need to keep her safe. It grieves us deeply. And so in light of that, we want to say thank you, Blessing, for living up to your new nickname. This story, it makes me cry. This story and so many more are why we launched this project. It's giving us all an opportunity to love on and appreciate the people that care and support us, and for those folks to receive that love and care in this really challenging time. And in a system that is not set up that way, right? With policies that are not set up that way. We want that to feed into fueling more of our stories to change the way to create change.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that submission. That is absolutely beautiful. And that's just one example of many, many wonderful and heartwarming and touching stories that people have submitted and continue to submit. So for those who want to be a part of this project, how can people participate in Hand in Hand's storytelling project, Honor Domestic Work, and again, get their hands on that beautiful poster? What do they need to do?
Go to honordomesticwork.com and share your story with us. We'll send you a free poster. If you'd like to just get one of the posters for yourself or give the poster to a caregiver or domestic worker in your life, you can also purchase one on the website. This is such an amazing time of year, right? To show our gratitude to the people who support us in our homes. And we hope you'll join us and all of our sponsors in really lifting up a celebration of domestic work, of domestic workers and family caregivers.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you to everyone who tuned in and who commented and participated today. I also, again, want to thank my guests, Gillian Fallon, Stacy Kono, Reshma Saujani, for joining me today. And once again, if you're interested in learning more about the incredible work that Hand in Hand is doing every day to support employers of domestic workers and caregivers, and to share your story, be sure to visit honordomesticwork.com. The link is in the chat. Also, next Thursday, December 9th, Caring Across Generations will be organizing the Grandmas Unite event, where grandmothers, elected leaders, care workers, disability rights activists, and other caregiving advocates will be gathering outside of the Capitol to push the Senate to swiftly pass the Build Back Better bill. The event will be live streamed, and grandmas from across the country will participate virtually by sharing a photo, video stories, on social media. Spanish and American Sign Language interpretation will be available on site and online. For more information on that in-person and digital event, please contact J. Ray Wang, whose email address is in the chat. And to share your video submission, you can follow the link in the chat to share your photo story. And this applies to all of those with a care connection. Please visit caringacross.org/the-grandmas-r-coming. That's the-grandmas-r-coming. And we look forward to seeing your submissions. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.